All right. Hello, everyone. Richard Wooten podcast, episode 2, part 2. The first part was more of a follow-up to episode 1, so that's why I decided to split this up, even though we recorded it all at the same time. In this one, we hit on two things. First, we talk about Joey Jordison and sort of have a tribute to him and his influence on us individually, on me as a drummer, and to put his body of work in a bigger context and what it meant to the drumming community as a whole, and sort of where he sits in the great pantheon of metal drummers, and not just metal drummers, but the drumming community as a whole. So we talk about that. And then the second thing we talk about is this concept of art albums and when a band makes an art album. So sometimes that art album might just be a pivot, might be something different than what their fan base was expecting. And really, I mean, it's always a pivot, but it really just sort of depends, I guess, on what happens after it. If that album is an art album or a critical benchmark or a sellout. So it kind of just depends, I guess. But you kind of, I guess, just have to sort of feel it out with a band's career. So we talk about different examples of that and ones that we think are, and we throw ideas out. But here's why I'm doing this intro. Because we're still new at this, and so we were showing each other these albums. So if you're just listening, you're not going to know what we're talking about. So I'm going to list the albums in order that we talk about them in the description. So if you hear me and Robert be like, so what do you think of this? Oh man, that's terrible. Oh, that's great. Whatever. If you hear that and you don't know, and we don't actually say what we're talking about, just check the description. Anyway. Appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoy. That was like mini. So that's the first thing that we're going to get to. We should have talked about all three things we were going to do at the beginning.
Well, too late now.
I'll add an intro and talk about it. So the next thing that I wanted to hit on was, I don't know what date he died, but within the past 2 weeks or so, Joey Jordison died. Rather unexpectedly, because he was only like 46 or something.
Yeah, 46.
And so,
fuck, man, that's only 8 years older than I am.
Fuck that, right? Like, well, and consider that his most prolific work was from, really just in from 99 to, 2010, 2011 or so.
Yeah.
Like a decade long. It's crazy that he had as much influence as he did. So
July 26, a little over 2 weeks ago.
Gotcha. So, us being 38 and us being in high school when Slipknot Self-Titled came out, being like sort of in between our sophomore and our junior year, Slipknot was absolutely prolific for us. So, we wanted to riff on that. And me, being a drummer and whatnot, I have quite a bit to say. But before I start rocking my spiel on shit, so I wanted to sort of ask you to kind of get a guitarist perspective.
Yes.
So in 99, so I'm trying to think I guess as a guitarist, how did sort of other drummers at the time, I guess how did Joey sort of seem in comparison to other drummers to you at the time?
So we're talking first album.
Yeah, first album.
99.
Or later,
because, well, I mean, as it went on, obviously my opinion solidified, but just hearing, wow.
I don't have any Slipknot vinyl.
Wow.
But I have all the CDs.
Yeah, so hearing this album, I didn't really know what to make of it at first, but one of the things, so much fucking going on in this album, right? There's 9 people making a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And you just hear bits and pieces of guitar, you hear a little bit of a guitar riff here and there. I don't remember any bass on this album, but it's probably there. Samples, obviously, percussion, so you hear a shitload of drums everywhere. But the drumming on the drum kit that took place on this album was very precise and very powerful and fucking fast and intricate in a way that you did not normally hear on a lot of metal albums, and this at the time was like very fast, aggressive metal that wasn't really happening a lot in a lot of ways. Is how I remember it.
Okay.
It was impressive.
Right. Okay. Yeah, like, so I was really fortunate that my first time hearing Slipknot was seeing them live, July 1999 on Ozfest. And so at like 11 o'clock in the morning, they were the third band.
Brunch band. The brunch band.
The brunch band, yeah. They were the third band to go on. And it was Flashpoint, Head PE, and then Slipknot. And so, I mean, not to just go into... I'm going to try to keep it focused on Joey and to try to keep it focused on his drumming. Because we
could do a podcast about Slipknot, I'm sure.
Absolutely, we could.
So try to laser focus for now, I guess.
So the thing was for me is that in 99, I was already into death metal and I was already into black metal. Like I already had Morbid Angel records. I was already into Emperor. I was already had the first Nile record. And so and the thing too was that climate then still sort of had a little bit of this like it wasn't a guarantee that bands were going to have double bass and stuff. But I loved that. That was like my shit. I loved it. You know what I mean? But I mean, even on that Ozfest lineup, the only other two bands on the entire bill that, had prominent double bass was Slayer and Fear Factory.
Huh. Yeah.
And when you think about it, really, of the big bands of that time that had prominent double bass playing, it was really just like Slayer, Fear Factory, Pantera.
Yeah, because you're right. That time period was like a big lull in that style, and I really can't think of too many other. It was always a kind of a treat to hear.
Right. Yeah. And so to hear a drummer like Joey just whole hog like into it, and to sort of be using like some of the death metal vocabulary. He wasn't using blast beats yet, not on the first record. But just there were still elements of the vocabulary and the thing too is like there's a lot of like, if you haven't listened to a lot of Morbid Angel, you don't really understand how much sort of Slipknot sort of lifted from their feel.
Yeah, I have no reference point for that. So.
I'll show you some stuff in a little bit. But I knew that. And so whenever I would hear those things, all of a sudden I felt like these 9 crazy fucks from Iowa listened to what I listened to. And it made me feel very, very seen and understood. And so yeah, it was like one of the biggest deal shows I'd ever seen.
Right.
Biggest, and then and he hung, and this is the thing too, he hung out and he signed stuff for like 40 minutes after the set. And so I went up to him and I had a chance to meet him briefly.
Oh man! At the first time you saw them.
First time.
Wow! I didn't know that.
Yeah, man. And so I go up to him, and in my dumb, dopey, like jockey 16-year-old way, I was like, "Dude, bro, I love that fucking double bass, man." I said some dumb shit like that, right? And we didn't sit there and like talk for a half hour or nothing, but what he said and the way that he said it really just left an impact on me because he was just so intensely grateful and sincere. And he put his hands together and he said, "Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." It for me as a kid, it felt like he really heard what I said and like he, and he really just reciprocated me trying to, and he was like, "Thank you so much, man. Is there anything you want me to sign?"
Yeah. Just being engaged with the person talking to him there.
Absolutely. And I didn't have anything, but I had my wrist taped up because my wrist was messed up from football or something. And so he like signed my wrist tape.
Oh man, cool.
Like I have it in a box inside. I didn't have time I was going to try to find it, but I didn't have time to find it.
Joey signed my cast, man.
Kind of, yeah. You know, and so, but basically his reaction right then like that is like, okay, well, I'm a Slipknot fan for life now. Absolutely. You know, I'm going to buy a shirt. I'm going to buy the album. I'm going to buy the fucking, you know, the flamethrower, the cereal,
The koozie.
whatever I can find. And so yeah, so that was like a thing that, you know what I mean? And a lot of people sort of talk about like, you know, like, oh, Joey, because then on Iowa, you know, he brought blast beats into it. And so he sort of raised, like, he, you know, he made blast beats an undeniable part of the metal drummer vocabulary. It became, so can you just imagine, like, you're a young drummer? Because we're a little older. You know what I mean? So we already had a band. We were already playing our instruments, you know, but can you imagine like getting into drums and you're hearing People Equal Shit and Disaster Piece?
Yeah.
That's a high motherfucking bar, dude.
Yeah.
and that's what, and so like when you look at like a lot of the deathcore bands, you know, Suicide Silence and all those guys, you know, that were really like prominent in the late 2000s, Slipknot was like their Pantera, their Metallica in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah. I guess I never really realized that. Like looking back, sure, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But at the time, I certainly didn't.
Like he's the reason there's just so many sick ass drummers right now. Like there's just you know, like it's so, because they got into him and then they would read an interview or something like that and he'd mention Morbid Angel or Deicide and then they would get into death metal. And then, you know what I mean? Like, and so on and so on and so forth, you know? And so, yeah, so there's like that whole aspect of it, right? Now, so now here's like another like really sort of specific thing that I want to riff on in terms of Joey's drumming.
Okay.
So in the great sort of pantheon of jazz drummers, okay, Tony Williams is kind of, if there was one person who was at the top, if there had to be one, then lots of people will say Tony Williams. Undeniably one of the best musicians to ever pick up the drumsticks is sort of his reputation. And I didn't really get why until really this past year. I mean, I've been playing jazz and been listening to jazz for like 20 years or something.
Right.
But I didn't, you know, it's like, okay, well, I understand what everyone is saying about it, but I don't really get it. And then I finally got it this past year or so. I don't know what made it click, but it finally clicked. And so so the thing about Tony Williams is that, so the role of the drummer in the band, you have a few functions. Okay. So there's like keeping the time, there's, outlining the form of the song, you know, like, okay, well, this, you know, like dynamically, like here's the verse, I'm going to close the hi-hat. Here's the chorus, I'm going to open the hi-hat. Here's the bridge, I'm going to go to the right of the tom, you know.
Yeah. Setting the tone in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like you're building the framework, right? You know, you're maintaining the tempo in the feel, you're building the framework. And then there's sort of also you're sort of guiding, you know, through your fills and your dynamics and your changes, you're guiding to the next section, you know, like you're conducting the band, right? And so before Tony Williams, drummers were sort of judged on how well or how interesting they performed those functions. It's like, oh, well, you know, Tony, you know, like Elvin Jones is just such a great, he just accompanies John Coltrane in such a great way. Like he just makes John Coltrane sound so good. Like you were sort of defined by how well you made the rest of the band sound.
Right.
Okay. Now, then Tony Williams comes along and Tony Williams is like, fuck you. Keep your own goddamn time. I'm not going to babysit you while we're up here on this fucking bandstand. You know the tune. You need to keep up with the music. You need to know where you are. You need to know the tempo because I got shit to do. I got shit to say.
You bought him a metronome.
Yeah, fuck off. You know what I mean? And so, like, he has this really great quote. I didn't have time to look it up exactly. But it's something, it's like something to the effect of, like, if you're telling a drummer not to play loud or soft, he's like, loud? That's what these drums fucking do. Like, they play loud, they play soft. That's what they do. That's part of what this instrument is. Did you go to a piano player and tell him not to play the low keys or the high keys? And so that kind of drummer first, like that kind of like, well, yeah, man, like if you can take your saxophone and go out into fucking outer space and the rest of the band can hold it down while you do that, why can't y'all hold it down while I fucking go out? And no one really did that before him.
Okay.
And that's why Tony Williams is such a big deal. That's why Tony Williams inspired like all of the great drummers of like the late 70s and into the 80s who defined the studio scene of the 80s, who then defined the next decades of pop music and whatnot. Tony Williams is their like numero uno. They're like, he's why I play the drums, you know?
So he sounds like the kind of person, obviously, but like the kind of thing, the kind of event that happens in a space where afterwards everyone just does that. So you don't really know why it's such an important inflection point unless you were like experiencing it before and after or have a lot of knowledge about it.
That's exactly right.
Gotcha.
That's exactly right. And that's how like Herbie Hancock describes it. You know, that's how people will describe, you know. And so I feel, so there's a few drummers that I sort of feel across genres that sort of fit this kind of thing, you know, this kind of like, fuck you, man, drums. And Tony Williams is one. Stewart Copeland is another one to me. Dave Lombardo is another one. And Joey Jordison. I feel like Joey Jordison is closer to the Tony Williams ethos and whatnot than Stewart Copeland and even Dave Lombardo. And so this is the thing though, right? So there's sort of a double-edged sword to that approach, right? Mm-hmm. You know, because you were in a band with me while I was trying to do shit like this. So for that approach to work, there's a few things that have to happen.
There are some prerequisites.
Yeah. It's got to make sense with the vibe of the music. Whatever that is, right? Like Joey Jordison's chops and everything would not have made sense it wouldn't have worked in Pantera, right? It wouldn't have worked in, you know what I mean? Or whatever. I don't know.
Any number of other bands.
Yeah. I'm not saying that Joey couldn't have made Pantera music work if he chose to. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm saying like, you know,
the Slipknot music that he made.
Yeah, like what Slipknot's music requires something different than Pantera's music or Led Zeppelin's music or whatever. Yeah. I'm not claiming that he couldn't, you know, or whatever. Anyway, that's whatever. So it's got to fit the vibe of the music. The other thing is that the rest of the band has to be ungodly good, right? The rest of the band has to be so on top of everything. Because when you go out in outer space, they got to like hold their ground and not get lost.
Right.
Okay.
It's a good point.
And so that's sort of like, because I sent you those two like examples, right? I sent you like that like clip of like the blistering from the live record, which if you want to hear, or the blister exists.
Blister exists. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to hear like Joey Jordison, like full clip Joey Jordison, listen to that live album, the 9 live. It's in here somewhere.
Yep.
This one. Listen to that. So there's like a moment around the 3:45 mark where it's like building into the last chorus and he goes full morbid on the double bass. Okay. Like it's dynamically inappropriate. Okay.
You can't be doing that.
It's not what you should do. It's not what you should do. It's where you should be building, right? Your double bass is your full tilt, right? You know? And it's not what he plays on the record. if you were a lesser musician in a band with him, you would think that he's in a different part of the song if you didn't trust him. You know? And so there, to me, there's like a similar parallel with how Tony Williams plays a lot. And the example I sent you was like that ESP off of the Miles Davis Quintet album, ESP, the title track. And so at the end of it, you know, because, you know, jazz music, oh, we'll play the head, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then we solo and shit, and then we play the head again. Normally, you would play the intro and outro head pretty straight ahead, okay? But if you listen to the way, and the first head, he does kind of play it more or less kind of straight ahead, you know? But then the second one, he's dropping in and out, and it's all fucking weird. It feels janky and shit. And if you weren't Miles Davis or Wayne Shorter or Ron Carter or Herbie Hancock, like some of the best musicians who ever lived, and you didn't trust him, you'd be like, this motherfucker doesn't know where we're at. That's what you would think.
Right.
And so those things that may seem dynamically inappropriate, right? Like they're things that not every drummer can get away with, right? Every drummer can get away with like hi-hat on the verse and ride on the chorus, and you know, every drummer can get away with that, right? And you know, but those things they're sort of like they break the rules. They're not what you're supposed to do. And because of those guys being the specific geniuses that they are, they can get away with it. And man, is it exciting. And so that's sort of like my thesis on why Joey Jordison is the modern Tony Williams, the closest thing that we have to a modern Tony Williams.
I'll buy that.
And so there's one other point, and this is really important. Sorry. For all that to work, right? That what I'm talking about, like all that outplaying and stuff like that. What's the other thing that the drummer has to do? The drummer has to really know the fucking songs. He has to really know the riffs, you know, or he has to really know the tune, right? Which Tony did. And Joey did. Why did Joey know the fucking songs? Because he wrote them. Not something that everyone that I didn't really understand until a few years ago. That like, oh, what do you like? Joey and Paul wrote almost all of it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either.
So of course he like can fucking stretch the fuck out and do what he wants to because he knows those riffs in his bones because he wrote them.
Because they're from his bones.
Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah.
And so, but yeah, man, listen to that. If you want to understand what a fucking boss fucking Joey Jordison is, listen to that live record and just consider that there's 8 other motherfuckers running around on stage. And this motherfucker has the balls to be like, oh, fuck it. Drums.
There was one part that I listened to some more of it on the way over here, and it got to the Nameless eventually.
Yeah.
And so the drum break in there, the dun, 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 dun. So it's that part is just drums and percussion playing.
Mm-hmm.
And you could almost feel like percussion was wanting, because they're like, what, 2 percussionists, right?
Right.
They were wanting to like rush it super bad.
Okay.
And you could almost feel Joey going like, back here, you son of a... like keeping everything in line enough so that everyone else, I think, knew what to... It was like very much a conductor's...
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't intentional. Maybe I'm just reading into it, but that's what it felt like was going on.
Yeah, like I learned a little historical tidbit that I didn't know, which was that while Machine Head was recording the Burning Red at Indigo Ranch with Ross Robinson, that overlapped with while Slipknot was recording their self-titled album. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of like mutual hanging out, you know, like Joey and Clown and some other people are in the vocal booth while Rob's doing vocals for Nothing Left and shit like that, you know. But he was talking about how it seemed pretty clear, Rob was talking about, it seemed pretty clear to him that like, oh, okay, Joey and Sean, they run this shit. They're the bosses of this band, you know?
Right.
He was also talking about how Joey was sober, like the entire making of the album and like their entire first few touring cycles that they did with them and stuff like that, which kind of surprised me because the drumming on that album does not, that drumming sounds like cocaine to me. That drumming does not sound like sober. And I don't know. Maybe he was coked out by Volume 3. Who knows? I don't know. Whatever it took to make that sound, it was do it.
Right.
But yeah, like it was, his legacy is, I mean, shit, dude, what a fucking legacy, you know, the impact that he made. So he's going to be remembered forever and he deserves it. You know, I don't know what else to say.
Were you ever into the Murder Dolls by chance?
No, I never listened to like a note that they played.
I didn't either.
You know, but
it's so weird. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't have any animosity towards them.
Absolutely not.
Never did.
Yeah. What I thought was really interesting. So here's like a thing that I do think is really interesting about like the other shit that Joey did. Right. Because if all he did was Slipknot, that'd be enough. Right.
Other thing is, I don't really know much about what else he did.
Oh, okay.
Besides the Murder Dolls. I know that was his baby there. But
right. Yeah. Because he played guitar in it.
Yeah.
Right. And so he was behind. He wasn't. You know, he could move around and jump, finally. What every drummer dreams about doing.
Instead of just spinning around
Instead
in
of
the
just
air,
spinning. And,
like normal drummers do.
So a thing that he like did that really not, it's super common now for drummers to sort of like, you know, excuse me. Like, oh, so-and-so couldn't make a tour, so this person's going to fill in.
Yeah.
That's super.
I see that happening a lot. Yeah.
It's super common now. I don't feel like it was that common back in the 90s and the early 2000s, but Joey did it a lot. So, like, Satyricon, okay? Like, one of my favorite bands of all time, black metal, like Norwegian black metal. OG, they like their drummer had trouble getting a visa or something, and he like sat in and did a tour, did like a club tour or something with them. Okay, Satyricon's music ain't easy, dude, and so like that's insane. Right. He toured with Korn, you know, at one point after David Silveria left. He did some shows with Rob Zombie, I believe. He might have done a full blown tour with Rob Zombie as well, you know. On like one of these shows down in Australia or something, like a Big Day Out or Reading, I don't know, one of these big festivals, like Lars wasn't able to play in Metallica for some reason, like the only Metallica show he's ever missed.
He was suing Napster at the time.
It was after that.
He was probably still suing Napster.
He's still, yeah. But yeah, like, so they got like a whole bunch of drummers to like rotate in to like play different Metallica songs and stuff, you know? That's cool.
Yeah.
But Joey played like most of them. Because like they're like, hey, can you do this one too?
Because he could.
And he could. And they were like, this is good. This guy's good enough. You know? I remember seeing an interview with Dave McClain from like Machine Head because he's like he's an incredible guitar player too. He wrote a lot of Machine Head riffs.
Yeah.
You know? And he was like, yeah, man, I was so fucking upset because I didn't like by the time I heard that they needed someone to do that, like, because he was there, he was playing, you know, he's like, I got to like the thing and they'd already like settled into Joey, you know, and I'm like, man, that sucks.
Too late for Dave.
That sucks. But yeah, so there's this old like grainy fucking YouTube footage from like 15 years ago or whatever of like Joey and his mask and shit playing on Lars's kit and like ripping through every, you know what I mean? And so like he played with Korn, he played with Rob Zombie, he played with Metallica, he played with fucking Satyricon. Okay, come on, dude. There's not even that many people that even could do that. Right. Let alone had the chance to.
Because, like, I mean, Satyricon aside, I assume they're far more technical than I really know because I just don't know their music that well. But everyone else you listed there, not the most technical drum parts in existence.
That is not true.
But, well, my point, though, is that you have to be able to hit a lot of styles.
Yeah.
Very well.
Right.
And nail them.
Right.
And I think that's what he actually.
Yeah. I think that's it. And I think
I'm not saying he played fucking Dragula and it was just boom, boom, doom, 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 or you know whatever.
Because he didn't.
I would hope not.
Yeah, and so yeah, like I that's just the thing that is like really blows my mind and I didn't really realize it, but like, you know, because Dave Lombardo was a huge influence on me. And I think it's like a double-edged sword because I was really into Decade of Aggression, that live Slayer record. And Dave doesn't play what he plays on the records, and that record is sloppy as fuck. But man, it has a vibe to it. And so I was like, yeah, man. So I'm kind of a sloppy drummer because of that, you know? Like, you play with me. There's a lot of drummers, there's a lot of metal drummers, and what they do is like, this is the part, and this is what I play.
Yeah.
Every time they shoot for, that Neil Peart school of doing it. Like, here's the perfect performance, and I will strive to do it this way every time.
Right.
That's not what I did.
No, it's not. for better and worse.
Right. So
Yeah.
Blame Dave. Blame Joey. So, but yeah. So you will be missed because I know that there was so much more that you had to give.
Yep.
So
too young.
Okay, so that's the end of our Joey tribute. All right.
Joey Tributani.
Did you just make a Mark Tremonti joke? Is that what that was?
No, I made a Friends joke.
Oh, there it is.
But also, you know that Mark Tremonti is like weirdly this modern day sort of guitar hero?
I did know that.
Isn't that just so weird to me?
It is a little weird.
But, so I'm just like tangent real quick.
Get it.
About Mark Tremonti.
Please.
But yeah, once I realized that, I was like, oh, what the hell has he been doing that he's going to be lauded as this guitar god these days? And I went and listened to some of his like solo albums. Tremonti is the band name. And then I guess he's still in Alter Bridge and then maybe some other band. I was like, he's fucking good. And then I went back the other day. I used to really be into My Own Prison, like back in high school.
It was a solid record.
It's a pretty solid record. It doesn't hold up as well as I would have hoped, but there's still some solid shit on that album. Great riffs, primarily.
Yeah.
Fantastic riffs in a weird way that I don't know if this is going to make sense to you, but I mean, only the way that only other guitarist who writes riffs like this is the dude from CKY. I can't think of his name. Chad Ginsburg, I think.
I have no idea.
They write really weird, intricate riffs that are very interesting at all times, but they're not super hard. They just sound really good. But they're very melodically interesting all the time. And that's what Tremonti's really, really good at. And he can like shred and stuff, sure, but the really interesting riffs that he writes, and he's done it since that first album, that first Creed album. Just
that's
really weird.
That's not easy to do.
No, I think it's very hard to do.
It's easy to write riffs that no one can sing along to.
Yeah.
But writing a riff that's good, that is unique and also memorable, that's motherfucking impossible almost.
Dude from Disturbed is also very good at that. Very good riffs.
I really liked that. I like the second Disturbed record.
I like a lot of their albums, weirdly.
So
they're a good band.
They got real samey to me after, I guess, the third one.
They're not very different.
Okay.
Throughout.
All right. So I'm not wrong in that assessment.
No, you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
No, you're right on the money there.
Okay.
But the thing that they do really well, and it's not different though. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
it's like an AC/DC approach of like.
Yeah.
Like this is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like.
Sort of.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess that's not too different. Yeah, the thing I can't get over the album version of Down with the Sickness of like, don't do it again, mommy, and all that.
Fuck the album version. He does that live.
Oh no!
To this day.
No, I didn't know that.
I didn't either until like a couple of weeks ago, and I heard a live version of that.
Oh no!
And it got to that part, and I realized what was happening. I was like, oh, is he gonna do the thing? And he just did it verbatim. And I was like,
man,
I guess you really have some attachment to that spiel there. Go ahead, man. Do your thing.
That like, I mean, the whole like child abuse trope, and not just nu metal, but in 90s media overall, I feel like is its own subject.
Okay.
So, and
nu metal for sure. It's all over.
It's all over it, man. Because And because it happened, like Jonathan Davis was actually molested. Rob Flynn was actually molested, you know?
I don't doubt that those things happened at all.
And so
It was just very.
it
is
sounds
very,
like David Draymond was just spanked, but I might be wrong. I'm sorry, David. I don't mean to piss on your trauma. I apologize.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I guess what I'm getting at is that like we watched like Forrest Gump the other night, which came out like '94, I think.
Yes.
All like, because there's the character of Jenny, right? And like all Forrest has to say is that like her dad was real affectionate and always hugging and kissing her.
Oh, when he's talking about the way he saw it, basically.
That's all he had to say. They never even show Jenny and her dad in the same frame. They show him coming out of the house, something girl, and then they run out in the field and something make me a bird, make me fly away.
Yeah.
They never actually show them in the same frame, but just with those few lines, you as the audience member at the time knew like, oh, okay, well he's molesting his daughter.
Right.
To me, that right there in itself says something about how prevalent that was, at least in media, that it was like, oh, okay. Like you didn't have to explain it. It was just like, oh, yeah, okay, he sexually abused his daughter. Okay. You know, and to me, that almost sort of like points to like, why was that so understandable? Because 10 years prior, people were getting their shit, like in the 80s, people were getting their shit molested out of them. You know, and so
yeah, that was the sort of thing for a long time. Was just like it was tolerated and unspoken.
Right. I remember hearing some random tidbit. It's terrible about like in the early '80s. That the way like the laws were structured and the way that things like that like judges would actually like, okay, well, I know that this guy sexually abused his kids, but if we put him in jail, it's going to cost us more in welfare to take care of the family than it would if he was working. So just don't do it again. Like there were those kind of incentives of like no, doesn't matter that like wife and kids are in a situation where they are terrified and being abused and damaged.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I almost feel like that is like its own.
It's its own subject for
sure, or just like the faux, because like that was the thing, right? Is that those sort of became like the, you know, the tropes of the nu metal genre, and then it sort of at times seemed like, well, everyone's got to pretend they were molested, like everyone's got to have a song about being molested.
Or, I mean, it really did feel that way, strangely.
You know,
did Godsmack? I feel like Godsmack might have done it.
I don't know,
and then broke the camel's back. Perhaps. I feel like if anyone did that, it was Godsmack, but I don't know. I can't remember. Sure.
Whatever they did, I just know that they did it alone and they did it away from someone else, you know. Go away, keep away, stay away, stand alone.
I can't even, yeah. What more is there to say?
Yeah, and then and then the jets take off. Then the Navy, join the Navy. Like,
oh no, that did happen. I must have seen that commercial 38 million fucking times.
Stand alone.
Oh wow,
that was on the Scorpion King soundtrack, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just transported back to like 2003 for a minute.
But yeah, like I don't know, man. I feel like that's sort of like its own. Because I think you're right. Like that's sort of like what kind of made nu metal terminate. Like kind of, I think one of the factors that kind of went into its sort of implosion was like, you know,
there was a weirdly large that happened frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Strangely, and whether that's a symptom of it just being that rampant, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or if it was like, oh, we can write about this. Let's just write about this.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because I never experienced, and so I mean, we wrote a song about it. You know, that's Warmth is about child abuse, but I didn't write it in a first person point of view. I wrote it as like, I'm gonna write this fucked up story.
Right.
But it still was like, well, that's what you write about if you're in a metal band in 2003.
That is kind of what it felt like at the time.
You know?
Like, we need to write about some real shit.
Right. And I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe that's like, I feel like maybe that's the simplest answer, right? Is that because I do remember saying that to myself. I do remember like, okay, well, to me, what this music represents is it is lifting. It is looking at the dirt under the rug. It is facing the things you don't want to face. It is looking at the ugliest parts of yourself, of society, of your relationships or whatever.
Right.
And what is the ugliest thing that you can imagine? And child abuse is right up there.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe it's just a byproduct of that.
I could see that. Yeah.
You know,
because that was definitely the prevailing attitude
right
at the time. Was like, put the shittiest shit.
Right. Yeah. Like the most intense. Most intense perspective and whatnot to try to put that forward, Yeah. So, I feel like I want to dive into that at one point, like explicitly of like, new metal tropes or something. I don't know.
I'm sure there are a number of good ones there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. End of segment 2. Chick. All right. So the next thing we wanted to talk about today, we've had this idea rolling around for like a month, I think.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Right. Because we were just hanging out and we sort of just naturally started talking about, Great Southern Trendkill. And then that got on to the subject of...
Or Volume 3. I forget which one came up first.
It was Southern Trendkill that came up
was
first.
It? Okay.
And it was like, all right, like what happens... when a metal band or a rock band does their art album, right? And so that's what we're gonna riff on now.
Yeah.
So
is it really an art album? Is it hated? Is it loved? Is it
right? Yeah. So
is it seen as a turning point or a dive off a cliff?
Yeah. Because that was sort of a thing that I ran into of like, well, how do you define an art album? So how would you, while I'm changing props, how would you define an art album?
Ooh, well, the first thing I have written here is, to be clear, this is not a list of my favorite music. So there's that, I guess.
Okay.
That doesn't really do anything for you there. I don't know. It's like, on the one hand, and some of the examples that I have bear this out, it's where a band finds, or an artist, really, it doesn't have to be a band, finds sort of their explicitly creative voice in a way.
Okay.
Because in my mind, and I think in a lot of the examples I have here, it's generally more of a... God, how to describe it? Like, creative is the only word that comes to mind, but it's like you're just putting more emotion, maybe, is a way to go.
Mm-hmm.
A
little more personal, maybe.
More personal, more weirdness, more you're out of your comfort zone a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
More
it's risks.
Yeah,
taking risks.
Disparate sounds than what you're more accustomed to making.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't have a good definition, is what I'm fucking saying here.
So what I sort of realized whenever I was sort of trying to like pin this down in my head is like there's sort of a difference. So like an art album, it has to sort of subvert the expectations of what the fan base was expecting in some way.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it's typically not the first or even the second album. It's a third album or later. I guess
that's another point, is that usually it is, in my eyes, it's the band has made their first or second album, like you said. They've sort of done what they're going to do in that space,
mm-hmm.
and they want to try something different.
Yeah.
They're tired of what they did, maybe, or they just have other ideas that they felt like didn't necessarily fit, so we're going to do something different.
Right. It's a pivot in some way often. And so, and I guess that, so to me, like an album that fits this is Southern Trendkill here,
Yeah.
right? CDs look so pathetic on this.
But they work a lot better, don't they?
They actually do. They're a little more balanced.
Yeah.
I don't have Trendkill on vinyl, so here we are. And yeah, and like, because I remember the experience of listening to this record, and the thing about this that is different than other Pantera records is that this really is a record. It really is like kind of a start to finish piece of music almost, whereas other Pantera records are like collections of songs.
Yeah, it's a journey in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there are. I know we were talking about it, right? There are things. I listened to it like after our conversation. There are things that held up way better than I thought they would. But I don't know which one it is. It's either Living Through Me or I think it's Underground in America. One of those songs. It has some really cool moments in it, but there's some like, it's like, oh, y'all ran out of riffs. This bridge is just a bunch of weird sounds.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like, is Phil mad about lesbians? What is going on? Like, what are the lyrics? Lesbian love and accepted are right. Like,
right.
There's something. It's like, why are you yelling about lesbians, dude?
I have no idea what he says there.
I don't know either, but I guess like the thing is that hearing this album, being 12 or 13 years old, whenever I heard it, I think I was technically 12. And it being one of the first new, like, I bought this album the day that it came out. I took it home and I put it on, listened to it.
Yeah.
I think that this really defined what I would come to think a good metal record was. And that it had to have this. It wasn't good enough for it to just be like, here's a bunch of rad ass songs all in a row. Like, it had to be epic in a sense,
Like another defining aspect is like it always feels like it has more substance than the stuff that came before it.
Right.
For better or worse, I guess. But
yeah.
Because it like this album versus even like Far Beyond Driven, which already felt like it had, to me anyway, more substance than Vulgar or Cowboys. In a weird way, if tonally, if nothing else, I'm gonna say.
Yeah, and when I look back, that's the thing, is that this doesn't seem. It depends on how you're looking at it, like how much of a departure this seems from Far Beyond Driven, right? And I guess that like that's what's interesting, is that like if you go from Vulgar, because that's really it. Like the second album, it's like a rate of change, right?
Right.
So
right.
The difference between the second album and the first album determines the direction that the band is headed in, right? And is that same direct, they keep going along that direction. And Pantera kind of did for Far Beyond Driven. Like Vulgar was more intense, harder, faster. And then Far Beyond Driven was more intense, harder, and faster than Vulgar.
I guess I don't think of it as faster. I think of it as slower, if anything, really.
Fuck, dude. Have you not heard Strength Beyond Strength? Have you not heard that song?
I watched it twice.
That song,
I'm familiar.
That's like the fastest song Pantera's ever played.
Yeah. But then there's like Good Friends and Bottle of Pills and all sorts of other weird, slow
It's true.
shit.
It's true. But
I guess that sticks in my mind more than
yeah. But it's the opening. Whatever it is. Like it's the fastest song. It's literally the fastest song. In their entire catalog. Like they never play the skank beat that fast in any other thing.
I think you're right.
But Trendkill, it's like it somehow went. That's it, right? It went extreme in both directions. Because there were aspects of it that were like almost harder and more intense. Yeah. Because Suicide Note Part 2 is maybe the most intense song that they've ever done. And then the opening, the way they open the record is extremely intense. But it also is like some of the softest stuff that they've ever done.
Right.
So it was extreme in both directions.
Maybe that's actually a really good point, is that there tends to be a lot more dynamism on these sorts of albums.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like a lot of the examples that I have, and this one in particular also, like Cowboys from Hell, it starts in a particular way, and it's weird on certain axes, right? And then it gets to Vulgar, and it's like a little bit, it's still pretty straight ahead, all things considered.
Right.
And then as things go on, as time goes on, you get to this album and it's just like,
Right. Yeah. Like,
Really-
cause Tens is fucking weird. 13 Steps to Nowhere is weird, but it's like 13 Steps to Nowhere is like this dark, distorted version of Psycho Holiday in a weird way, you know? Cause it has
Yeah.
that same like sort of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Floods is this amazing, epic, dark fucking thing. So and like,
Man.
and the thing was like Pantera had sort of flirted with those timbres and those vibes, but it was never like, here's full songs.
Here's what we would write if we were to write that vibe into a song.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's why. I think that's an element of why that one stands out to me. And so pointing those things out brings up another one that we were talking about.
Yes.
Plow, right? So you mentioned, I hadn't considered this one, and then you mentioned it, and the more that I think about it, I think I agree with you.
Yeah, this to me is like one of the examples of the shit that we grew up with at the very least of this happening. Because like I remember this album came out and you bought it and brought it over to my house.
Yeah.
And we sat and listened to it like
Right.
all the way through.
Yeah, man.
And it blew me away. It like kind of blew my mind a
yeah,
bit.
and we like traded, we like passed the fucking lyrics around and shit like that, and we were
Yeah.
like, God damn, their new mask looks creepy as fuck. I think Justin even came by and he was like, man, I don't know about this.
He came by for a minute and he was like, what do you guys do? Oh God, I'm out of here.
he was like, I don't know. Or maybe that was, I don't know.
I
He might have
remember
said that about Iowa. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I had this I remember that. Like I bought it wherever I bought it, like probably Blockbuster Music in Baytown in the
yeah,
mall.
wow.
And then like, I'm going to go over to Robert's house because he has the good speakers. We're going to sit there in his fucking room and listen to this shit.
Yeah.
You know, back in the old days.
Yeah, I just remember being absolutely floored by like what like I hear Slipknot in here, but this ain't the Slipknot that I'm accustomed to.
Right, because the first album is like this cathartic purge of like everything they had ever experienced and everything they had ever listened to. It's just all in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Iowa is this just dark, nasty mess. And I mean that in the absolute best way.
Yeah. It's a good dark nasty mess.
Yeah, it is. It has a very, it feels like that album when you listen to it, even now, it feels a little grimy.
Yeah.
You know?
In the best way.
In the absolute best way. So that's, but like I was saying, right? Like that establishes the trajectory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I have to add, them choosing to make Iowa when they did was, I feel like that was hugely influential. I feel like that was a big sort of watershed moment, you know, and I feel like that you could even maybe argue that like helped define the decade to come of what metal in America would be, because that is where they used blast beats full on in songs. They're instrumental parts of songs and People Equal Shit and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, System of a Down Toxicity came out around this time, and blast beats are featured prominently in one of the songs on Toxicity as well.
True.
John Doleman does not often get that cred that he rightfully deserves. And so, but speaking of Volume 3, though, if they were going to continue on that trajectory, then it would be like, all right, well, how do you get nastier and darker than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what's interesting is that they kind of did what Pantera did, where they went more extreme in both
Yeah.
directions.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because there's songs like 3-0 where the blast beat it's like, oh, this is the beat of the song. Like, it's not just it's not just an effect, right?
Right.
Because that's sort of like early blast beat stuff, like with like early Napalm Death and stuff like that. Like it was like those early guys, they were just sort of going like as fast as they could. Like it was a way to create a chaotic sound. It was almost like doing a whole note. You know what I mean? It didn't have tempo and time. You know, Pete Sandoval in Terrorizer was the first guy who was also became the drummer in Morbid Angel, was the first person to add like, you know, no, this is, you know, like, oh no, it's a subdivision. Right, you know, it's you know what I mean?
It's a more structured thing as opposed to just
Right. Like it's a rhythm. It's a tempo. You know what I mean? It has tempo to it.
Right.
And so, you know, the song 3-0, like it's like, well, that's the fucking beat to that song, you know? But then they also have these legit fucking ballads.
Yeah.
On this album. They have there's legit guitar solos, which I don't know if you remember the late 90s, but guitar solos were not okay for a while there.
No, that was like, yeah, exactly. That was one of the things about that album that, because at the time, I think I was probably still, what year was this?
2003 or 4?
I was almost certainly still in a headspace
4.
of like, holy shit, bands are like this band did a guitar solo. That's fucking cool.
Right.
Because it just didn't happen very much. And the ones that they did, and the way that they did them, and the way that I knew that they could play up to that point, made it all the more mind-blowing.
Right.
Because I was like, these guys did Iowa just a minute ago, and that's just like the heaviest fucking chunky riffs, and that's it.
Right.
And then they busted out all these solos, and they were like bizarre but like very technically proficient.
Right. And they're also like sort of in the, how to say it, like they're in the tradition, they're in the language, you know what I mean? Like they're sort of like, okay, well, you have listened to Kirk Hammett solos, you've listened to all these other solos, and I can hear how you're taking that and turning left with it instead of right, but instead of doing it over the course of like an entire bridge, you're doing it in one measure.
Yeah.
You know,
they came across more as riffs, really, than solos at times, which was in itself like a weird, like nobody fucking did that.
Right.
It's very strange.
But it really established because everyone knew like, oh, well, you know, the drummer's really good, but people didn't really know that like Mick and Jim were legit guitarists.
And that was sort of like the time when if you played a solo, all of a sudden people started noticing, and they were like, "Oh, you're a real good." Like there was some aspect of that, you know, like they probably had an article about it in Guitar World. I don't remember for sure, but that's probably the case.
Like I remember that was around the time that whenever y'all would do solos, like maybe within a 2 years of this or a year or two of this, when y'all would do solos, I would start to see kids do this stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess I was playing the solo, so I didn't notice.
Like, you know.
Oh boy.
But I feel like that was like a thing that like came out of the core scene or something like that. Like just
totally.
something that we just didn't get.
And like now that we're talking about this a little bit, and now that I've made this wonderful point, I feel like a lot of the music that came afterwards with like bands that we played with, for example, or a lot of bands that I didn't really listen to, played like that. Like they made those into riffs. Whereas like here's just this weird little lead thing. It's going to be a riff. It's going to be a one-off thing. And I don't know that that's where that came from.
I don't think it is.
Exactly, but I feel like that's the same sort of thing.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I think that a lot of the bands that we started to play with were coming out of the metalcore scene, which we were very ignorant of.
Totally.
But that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I would definitely consider this. These are definite art albums, you know? So I'm gonna throw another contender that I feel is a definite. I feel it's gonna be another slam dunk of an art album.
Throw your hat in the ring there.
Okay. You tell me what you think.
This is on my list.
Wonderful.
Nice. Well, okay, actually, hang on. It's on my list with a bunch of question marks after it. Because Nine Inch Nails, in general, is just such like a dynamic band from album to album that I really had a hard time figuring out where to draw this line.
But consider the trajectory.
That's why I ended up with this one.
Right. Like we think of them as such a dynamic band because it's hard for us to not see their entire career.
Yeah.
But think of pre-Hate Machine.
Right.
And then think of Broken. Oh, it's darker. It's more intense. Think of Downward Spiral in comparison to Broken.
Exactly.
And then this.
Exactly. Here's this like sprawling fucking epic double album.
Right.
But it's even weirder and nastier and darker.
Right.
And
it's like, why are you making me like all this light shit, Trent? Why are you making Lemaire? What do you mean? I want to fuck like an animal. I don't want to learn French.
You can't do those in the same class.
It's impossible.
Good Lord.
Wait, that's Espanol, my bad.
Yeah, for that same reason, for the trajectory primarily is why I put this on there.
And also it goes extreme. It's not this. It goes extreme in multiple directions, right?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be both. It can be multiple. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Right. So I
mean, I will say I'm not as familiar with this. Like, I didn't listen to this one nearly as much as a lot of other albums of theirs, so I don't have a whole hell of a lot to say about it, other than in my mind that is where it lives.
I remember being slightly challenged by it.
Yeah. For sure.
But I remember really, really liking it.
I remember when this came, or around the time it came out, we went on an art club field trip. And that is when I bought this album at like Sam Goody or some shit.
Nice.
Came back to school with it, and people were like, "Oh, you got the fucking Fragile? That's cool, man." And then I went home and listened to it, and I was like, "Oh, this is weird."
Right. What is the first few tracks on this even? Oh, of course, you can't just give me the oh, there they are.
I don't want to know which Halo it is, Trent.
I want to know what goddamn songs are on it. Oh yeah, The Day the World Went Away, The Frail, The Wretched. We're in this together now. Oh, these are all so good.
I haven't listened to this album in quite a while.
Oh, and Complication. That's one of the coolest instrumental tracks ever. Yeah, man, this album's so fucking good. An interesting tidbit to me is that we saw Slipknot in '99 play at the Eyeball, which was a small ass venue. This was their first tour I saw them on after Ozfest. So yeah, this wouldn't have been in '99. This would have been in spring of 2000. And so, and anyway, Corey fucking talked about this record. He talked about the Fragile, like in between songs. Yes. Like in between songs, he was like, "Y'all need to go get this record because it's one of the best fucking records I've ever heard."
Wow.
So
right on.
Yeah, man. I saw them on this tour and it was amazing. It actually greatly inspired seeing them on this tour, and how everyone had a mic in front of them greatly inspired. Like it really inspired me for the All Severed stuff that we did later. Or it made me really feel like whenever we stumbled into that, it's like, this is right. Because I remember how I felt watching Nine Inch Nails play, and, whenever they, do like Terrible Lie or whatever, and like this whole, everyone on stage is screaming at you, and it's a different level of feeling assaulted.
Yeah. That's a great point.
And so once we sort of tapped into that, it was like, this is the right, this is the way,
it's
kind of thing. So I'm going to add one more out here.
Okay.
Just on the topic of like one band mentioning another band's album on stage, right?
Okay.
So
I like this through line.
So in May of 1996, Great Southern Trendkill came out. In June of 1996, this came out.
Okay.
In July of 1996, I saw my first concert ever, which was Pantera and White Zombie. And for the month of, and up till that point in July, I was like, God damn, Trendkill's an amazing record. And from June to July, from this album coming out until me seeing that Pantera show, I was like, this new Metallica album is also amazing. This is an amazing record.
I think I know where this is going.
And then somewhere halfway through the set, in between, being drunk and heroin overdose, Phil says, y'all are goddamn lucky to have a band like Pantera come out and make a good fucking record like Great Southern Trendkill, and not that piece of shit like Load. And it was very strange for me because I was, as a 12-year-old, I've never felt a physiological change like that happen in my body.
You felt attacked.
I did not feel attacked.
No?
I did not. Because in that moment, every cell in my body understood. It's like, you're right. That album does suck.
Oh, you saw the light is what happened.
I saw the light. Yeah.
Okay.
Phil he called me home. And then me and everyone else in this arena just screamed as loud as we could because we all agreed that the Metallica album sucked. Now,
man,
I don't agree with that. I think this is a great album.
Okay.
In retrospect, I think this is a great album. But I'm really just telling that story to just sort of, paint the picture of how polarizing this album was in the metal community when it came out.
Absolutely. There's some great songs on here.
Yeah. There's just so many songs on there that not all of them can be great, because this was back in the day when you like filled the CD up.
I mean, Until It Sleeps single was the first compact disc that I bought.
There you go. Yeah.
Bleeding Me, Outlaw Torn are fucking awesome songs.
Yeah, dude. I love The House That Jack Built. I love that. I love King Nothing. I love Mama Said. I think that's an incredible song.
Right on.
But yeah, but now this is kind of tricky, right? Because like Metallica in their defying of expectations, because it could be argued that like every like other album or every third album they do is somehow an art album.
Okay.
Because of how they like just fucking like, well, I don't know what people want, but this is what they're gonna get.
This is where we're at in our own heads right now, which I mean kind of is what you should be doing as an artist anyway.
Right. Like there are OG motherfuckers that are like, dude, Ride the Lightning is a sellout album because they have acoustic guitar. Like there were people who thought that. Yeah, those people really exist.
Totally.
You know,
Kill 'Em All, Die Hard to this fucking day, which is such a weird.
Right. They're like, there's only two albums that ever existed: Kill 'Em All and Bonded by Blood.
Well, so this brings up another point about this whole concept here, is that does an art album have to be a positive thing in an artist's catalog?
That's a good question.
Because I know that to a lot of people, this is not a positive thing.
But you know what was really shocking to me to find out? Because in our generation, the people that we talked to, like the people who were just a little bit older than us, this was like the jump the shark moment. This was like Metallica, oh, they chose alternative.
Right.
They sold out, blah, 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 because they cut their hair and, smoke cigars now.
I forgot that was a whole thing.
People were really upset that they cut their hair. Yeah, really, really, really upset.
Yeah.
And the other thing that might not be super clear right now is that at the time, the basically the music press was making a lot of money by selling magazines, by selling this idea of alternative versus metal and stuff like that. Like that was a serious trope. Pantera bought into that. Like that, this whole Pantera album is about like the supposed victimization of metal to pop music, which is kind of bullshit. It's still a great album though.
It can be both.
It can be both, and so Metallica putting out this kind of album that's definitely like not like traditionally metal. And this is another thing I think that is not really well understood, is that hold on, there's two things I got in my thought queue here. So one of the things is that let me back up a little bit. The way that we feel about Load, there's a lot of people that felt that way about the Black Album.
Oh, totally. Absolutely, yeah.
And I didn't really understand that till a few years ago, and it kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because the Black Album was like my entry point into heavy music.
Yeah, I think same in some ways, yeah.
And so,
it was the second CD I ever bought.
There you go.
So there you go.
And so for people to be like, oh, the Black Album is like this, it's a piece of garbage. It's Bon Jovi to me or whatever.
It's Bob Rock, man.
Yeah, like, just to sort of like dismiss it as like pop music and stuff like that, which it's like, whoa, like they're going to be playing, like when I went and saw them a few years ago play like NRG, it's like, oh, they're playing, they're going to be playing a lot of their crap stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you mean crap? It's like, oh, like Sad But True and, all that garbage. I was like,
yeah.
The fuck? I thought that their garbage was on the next record. Like, I'm so confused by where the Metallica where is Metallica hiding their garbage? So there's that thing, but then the other thing I wanted to throw out there was that album changed. Like a lot of thrash metal bands tried to follow Metallica down that rabbit hole.
Uh-huh.
And no one could follow them down this one.
No. I don't think anyone else really tried.
I don't think they could, if they want, like Testament could not make a good record like this. Because this is, I do you not think this is a good record? This is important. You don't.
I think it's got some good songs on it.
Okay.
I don't listen to this album.
Okay.
Okay, I listen to S&M quite a bit.
Okay.
And that has a fair number of these songs.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time, they were still kind of coming off these albums.
Right.
That was like 2001 or something like that.
I think Reload is a bad album. I think Load is a good album, to clarify.
Okay. That's an interesting point. I haven't listened to these albums in a very long time either. So I'm going to have to go
So a
do
few
a little
years
bit
ago,
of rehash on these.
a few years ago, I was like, I'm going to listen to the entire Metallica discography in order and just fuck it, right?
Side note, we could probably do a whole fucking podcast.
I could do so many.
Okay.
And so I didn't give up. I didn't feel like giving up when I got to Load. Okay. I was like, this is better than I remember. There's some cool songs on here, you know? And every now and then you get to one like doesn't like, oh, that one didn't have as whatever. But the ones around it, oh, it's so cool. Reload. I almost gave up the endeavor. Like I got through Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, all of them. I got to Reload. I was like, man, this is a bad idea. You know, S&M was fine. That's real novel and fun to listen to. You know,
it's a good spread, I think.
Yeah, and it's really it's fun. It's really interesting to listen to. I liked listening to Saint Anger because it's interesting.
It is that,
and so I feel like some of the things that people bitch about it are overblown a little bit. But
someone has re-recorded the entirety of Saint Anger and put it on YouTube. It's not much better, but it sounds sonically.
Yeah,
there's improvement there.
Yeah,
it's very weird, but yeah.
You know, I enjoyed listening to it. I enjoyed listening to the Lou Reed record they did, Lulu, which I guess that's
that one's reviled.
That's the definitive art record of like, I know that people are not gonna like this.
Yeah, people hate that fucking album.
But we really want to do this, and it's interesting. Like, it's not like what I'm going to listen to while I'm like driving around and shit, you know, but it was interesting to listen to and it felt like something they wanted to do. And it's like, fuck yeah, man, do that, you know?
Yeah.
So
I think what's happening here is that we're much like the Nine Inch Nails. We're sort of determining that it's very hard to pin down which of Metallica's albums is an art album.
Yeah, well, Metallica is their own thing. Because
I need to say that I have on this list Metallica, Garage Days, or Saint Anger as my picks.
Interesting.
Because any of this shit is so fucking different than
what they were doing. And I feel like the genius of Metallica is that I've said this a billion times, but it's that they make albums for themselves. Like they make the album they want to make.
I think that's probably correct.
And then they play concerts for their fans.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because they've never done like what Iron Maiden does, or what Iron Maiden did at one point, which was like, no, we just wrote this new record and we're really excited about it, so I'm just gonna fucking hear. Run to those hills. But like they never do a concert where they don't play Master of Puppets or don't play Enter Sandman or don't play you know what I mean? Like they're like, yeah, man, we know y'all love that shit. Like we're here for y'all to have a great fucking time.
Exactly. We know why you came to see us. Yeah.
Right. And we know that you might really like the new record, but we know that you like all the other records too. So here we fucking, you know what I mean? And and I think that is the real secret. One of the many secrets of them maintaining the success and the sort of the vibrancy that they've maintained at the level they've been at, that they still feel inspired. They still feel excited to do it because they're making the records they want to make.
Yeah, I can see that.
They're not trying to make the Black Album again and again and again and again and again, you know? They're making what they're excited to make and letting it be whatever it is. But then when they play concerts, they're like, well, fuck, man, yeah, do, you know?
Yeah, yep. So anyway, very weird situation with. I mean, and it really, it's from the Black Album on, right? Like, because everything before that is pretty.
There's linear.
Yeah, it's a linear progression.
It feels linear, yeah.
Versus in the 90s, it just went buck wild.
It was like, just what kind of Metallica album you gonna get? Spin that motherfucking top, you know?
Yeah, pretty much.
I remember like lots of people. There were some people who weren't like, who were into hard rock or heavy-ish music, but weren't like metalheads, who were really excited when Saint Anger came out. They're like, dude, Metallica's hard again.
Huh.
And I remember listening to it. And at the time though, it was hard for me to really gauge because I was at that specific sliver in time was when I wasn't really listening to heavy music.
Uh-huh.
There was like a from like 2002 to 2003 or 4, like I was only listening to like jazz and Latin music to try to like understand that language and whatnot. So, but yeah, I have written down here like every third Metallica record somehow.
Okay, yeah.
So,
acceptable.
All right, so what's one that you got?
So one that I got that came up in our conversation as well was Crack the Sky by Mastodon.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, in the pantheon of music that I love, this is like one of the definitive examples of this happening. Because you had Remission, which was just sludge metal. You had Blood Mountain, which was still kind of just sludge metal. Mm-hmm. Or I'm sorry, you had Leviathan first, which was still just sludge metal. And then Blood Mountain sort of branched out a little bit. It's very much in the same Pantera vein of this happening. Whereas you start out pretty thin, and then you just at this point you go branch right way out. And then this album came out, and it was immediately obvious. And they had said in the lead up to this album that they were way more inspired by like prog rock,
right?
Hugely, and classic rock and stuff like that. And I think technically it's very in line with a lot of their other stuff because there are still like wild solos, awesome riffs, harmonization between people who can't sing all that well, but they do really well for what they do.
Right. There's a charm to it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And on the albums, they totally make it work. Live, not so much.
I've heard they've gotten better.
I love Mastodon to death, but it was not good.
When's the last time you saw them though?
I mean, I've seen live performances since we saw them, for example.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't seen them live, but I've seen.
I see.
They have improved. You're right.
Okay. Yeah. Mastodon's a weird band so like I'm going to totally defer to you on all things Mastodon because this is the only Mastodon record that I own. Because I'm a filthy casual when it comes to Mastodon.
To be fair, I give you a burned copy of Blood Mountain, I think, in 2005.
This is true.
But I think you'd like threw it under the seat and forgot about it. So it's, it is what it is.
No, I like my mother, keep everything. I'm sure I can find it. Yeah, I think that because of the age that I was, it was really hard for me at the time to see what was special about Mastodon whenever people were getting really excited about it.
Uh-huh. I think for you it was a big people were going sort of nuts about Braun, and you were like, I don't know about this guy.
Well, I guess like the things that he didn't seem
Braun Taylor, the drummer of Mastodon, by the way.
Right. Like the thing, I guess like the things that the things that he were doing. Come on, Braun. Why he were doing? You need to he were doing better. I think that his vocabulary, what he was doing, seemed much more novel to other people than it did to me because, I knew what jazz fusion was from the 70s.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it wasn't. It just his drumming was. It just felt like classic rock with longer tom fills to me.
I mean, I think that's pretty apt. That's a pretty apt description, though. I think that just wasn't in a lot of metal. Is probably the bigger thing.
Right, and I don't know that everyone was as big of a Sabbath nut as I was, because I was a tremendous Black Sabbath freak my first few years of high school. That was what my football coaches called me. That was my nickname. My nickname was Black Sabbath here, smoking them left-handed cigarettes. I still don't know what that means. I guess they mean weed. I don't know.
Must be some dating shit, man.
So I just think that in more so than like the drumming was this sort of like sense of like Mastodon is the heaviest band on the planet.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
And I remember listening to it, and I mean, it just didn't make sense to me at the time. And so then because at the time I was 20 something, and then I became a dick about it. Is basically what happened. And then I heard the first song on this record, and that was like, this was clearly one of the best songs ever written.
Oblivion, yeah.
And so,
oof. I mean, this is a concept album,
right? It's about a sister,
also,
right?
Yeah, Braun had a sister named Sky. I think she passed away from something. I don't know.
Cancer.
That sounds right. I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is sort of tangentially about her, but this is also about like Rasputin, and this is like astral projection,
right?
And all just sorts of weird shit that prog rock tends to be about. The metal isn't usually about.
Right. Yeah.
And the other thing about Mastodon is that I think they were a lot of people's entry into sludge metal, because that just wasn't really a big thing.
That wasn't. You're right. Because that was another reason they didn't seem novel to me, because I was like, dude, I'm already into Neurosis.
Exactly. That's the point. This is like a more Remission was probably a more accessible Neurosis for a lot of people.
Sure.
I
sure.
think.
Yeah, I mean, and even Scott Kelly has done like lots of, like, he did a whole tour with them because he guests on like all their records.
Yeah.
You know? And shit like that. Yeah, that was a big aspect of it for me too. That was a big aspect too of why I didn't latch onto metalcore stuff a lot, was because a lot of metalcore was really, and like Black Dahlia Murder and stuff like that, like they were really inspired by the melodic death metal, the Swedish metal, the Swedish sound, the Gothenburg sound, you know. But I already had the At the Gates record, and I was like, yeah, man, this is At the Gates with like a catchy chorus thrown in. That's all Kill Switch Engage really is. That's all that first Kill Switch record is, or not the first one, but Alive or Just Breathing or whatever.
Right.
And so I'm not trying to diminish those things. I'm just trying to sort of say why my 20-year-old self was a dick about it.
Yeah.
Because all the, it's all amazing, Anyway, but yeah, so I guess so how did this determine the rest of the trajectory of their albums? Because
ooh, that's a good question, because everything after this, I guess in sort of a weird way it actually did, because in my eyes, Mastodon never stopped diverging.
Right.
Maybe they didn't go as hard after this one, but it definitely kept, because everything since then has been at once like weird and also heavier and also way lighter.
Right. And I feel like we just almost touched on another aspect of what classifies something as an art album, oftentimes, as this term that we both know what we mean when we're saying it, but we can't define
much it. Like art itself. I don't know what the fuck it is, but I know it when I see it.
Like pornography.
Well, okay.
That's what a judge famously said about pornography in a court case or something. But I think that something that is an important consideration is how that album functions in the band's career. And I think oftentimes these art albums that we're speaking of, how they function is they sort of burn the expectations. They almost reset the slate. It's like, what we can do now? Whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah.
And so like after Metallica makes Load and still has a career, well, they can fucking do an album with a symphony. They can do all covers. They can make an album that sounds like literal shit. They can make a fucking spoken word art record where it doesn't even sound like they're in the same room as the guy who's doing the lyrics. And it's like, well, I guess they can do that.
Yeah. Who's gonna stop them?
Yeah.
Not their fans, obviously.
Yeah, like the fans are still gonna. I was like, well, I don't know. Well, they'll be here in March, so.
Right. I really want to hear Master of Puppets for the 38th time.
Yeah, or like Nine Inch Nails. Like Nine Inch Nails do whatever. He could do whatever the fuck he wants. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that's post Fragile
Yeah.
Nine Inch Nails.
Yep.
Or you could even say post Volume 3 Slipknot. They can do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's almost a way that it functions. You know what I mean? But sometimes I feel like bands fuck up though. So, and they have their art album and then they backtrack.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So I have an example of that.
Okay. Well, so for
Yes.
Mastodon specifically,
Yes.
with that point, I feel like in the lead up, because so a lot of Metallica fans leading up to Load, if they heard Until It Sleeps because it was the first single, maybe they were like, I don't know about this. But when people read about what Crack the Sky was going to be,
I see what you're saying.
I think they were either like cautiously optimistic to like, fuck yeah, you're going to do that. Yeah, I want to hear you do that.
I don't remember there being any backlash over it.
Not at all. It was like optimism to like absolute like jubilation.
I think that record is probably as close as you can get to a sort of universally praised metal record at the time that it came out.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Because I think that like maybe like some of the hardcore like hipster Mastodon fans might not have been crazy about it, but they weren't mad about it.
I get. Yeah. I mean, I can't be sure for obviously, but like I don't. That was not the vibe at the time.
Yeah.
It was very much excitement.
Right. And then a lot of like sort of people who had been on the fence about the band Hurt, I heard that and I was like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
I finally get it,
Yeah.
So, all right. So here's when art albums go wrong.
Okay. Get ready to shit on something.
Not really when they go wrong, because I think that this is one of my absolute favorite records of all time.
Okay.
But I think what came after it was a mistake.
Okay. Yeah, I should have known this. Mechanical Animals.
So in the trajectory of Marilyn Manson's career, this one is a what the fuck moment. Because you have Portrait of American Family, which is like this like dark, weird rock and roll record.
Yeah. Okay.
An incredible record, but I don't even know how to classify it really. And then Smells Like Children is like this remix industrial album, and then Antichrist Superstar is that fucking slab that it is.
Yeah.
That's an art album in its own regard, really. One of my favorite albums of all time. Huge influence on All Severed, I feel.
Yeah.
Do you remember that time when we covered Irresponsible Hate Anthem?
Yep.
And that dude came up after the show. Do you remember that?
Yep.
He's like, dude, you can't believe blah, 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 blah. And he like took his shirt off and he had like a Marilyn Manson back piece or some shit. I was like, whoa.
Thank you, sir.
But this album was just really unexpected. Like, as if you hear like Beautiful People and, and Little Horn and Tourniquet and all that. And then it goes from that to like Last Day on Earth and Rock is Dead and all this sort of stuff. It was very jarring.
It was, yeah.
But this album quickly became one of my favorite albums. I remember being excited to get home from school so I could listen to it.
Nice.
It's still one of my favorite albums to just turn on and play drums to. It was one of those, like, I'm just going to play this whole record. But I feel like this just should have been the moment. This should have been like, all right, cool. Marilyn Manson can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Mm-hmm.
But then he kind of backtracked. Then he tried to make like, all right, well, let me just make like a whole album of like slowed down, beautiful peoples. And that's sort of what Hollywood was.
Huh.
And like things just, and I still love that record. But I love it in a different way. I love it in a like, well, that's cool. It doesn't feel on the tier that the first part of his career does, so
yeah. So for me with this album, this is where I fell off of Marilyn Manson, pretty much. And honestly, I haven't really given it an honest shot since it came out.
Yeah.
But this album was enough for me to like. I think I'm good.
You're like, I don't need. It's like I don't need Manson with tits. I'm good. You know.
That was probably part of it, honestly, at the time.
It made people real uncomfortable at the time.
Yeah, I don't know. I just remember not liking any of the songs that I heard particularly.
They're like all my favorites somehow.
But weirdly enough, I think this is my sister's entrance to Marilyn Manson.
Oh,
Or she got way into him.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. What's all right? You toss one out.
Okay. So, oh man, which one to pick? Let's pick something a little different. How about, I don't know if you're going to know shit about this or not. Maybe you do, actually. I'm going to pick The Outcast with Speaker Box and Love Below.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I understand. I smell what you're stepping in.
Okay.
So
It smells like roses, I think. Is what you're trying to say.
So something I must preface with this conversation is that I think that the first hip hop record I ever really had that I listened to was a copy of Love Below and Speaker Box that you burned for me.
Hell yeah.
And I remember being over at your house and being like, oh my gosh, Robert listens to Outkast. Well, if Robert listens to it, it has to be good. Okay, I'll give this a chance. And yeah, like,
oh man,
it's one of the greatest albums I've ever made. But continue.
it's really good.
So I'm really familiar. In the past years, I got really into their first record.
Okay.
And then I listened to their second record quite a bit, but I hadn't sort of filled in all the gaps leading up to Speaker Box yet.
Right.
So
there's Southern Playalistic, and there's AT-Aliens, and then there's Stankonia, which was kind of their big.
Right, with Mrs. Jackson.
Miss Jackson. Oh, now that you said that, I fucking forgot everything else. There's a shitload
Bombs
of
Over Baghdad.
Bombs Over
maybe.
Baghdad was a huge one. That album is fucking phenomenal. That's from start to finish. That's probably their best album, I'd say.
And so, how is Speaker Box how is it a divergence from the trajectory?
Excellent question. I'm glad you asked that question that way. It is literally a divergence because they each made their Outkast is composed of Big Boy and Andre 3000, two artists, and for this album they each made their own album. It is the most divergence possible that you could get.
Right.
So Big Boy's album Speaker Box is like, it's still like an Outkast album. It kind of sounds like an Outkast album, and I think Andre's only on like one of the songs. He's on like the first song on Ghetto Music. Then you got this Andre 3000 record, Love Below, and it is
Weird.
fucking weird. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it aptly. Like it's this pseudo like lounge sort of R&B soulful like.
Yeah, and then isn't there like a version of like My Favorite Things on there with
Yep.
like drum and bass and
just
shit? underneath
instrumental.
it? Okay.
Yeah, it's awesome as hell. It's great.
Yeah.
But he's doing like skits. Well, there's skits on both of them. But his on the ones on Love Below are very much like just these weird little conversations with like a girl who's like, you can imagine is like laying on bed, or this guy who comes up to him and he's like, oh, how do you do, sir? Oh, very well. How do you do? And it's like, what are you doing? But it really works. It's
Yeah.
And like to say nothing of like Hey Ya or Roses, which are like huge
Sure.
hits. The rest of that particular, really the Love Below here is the art album piece. Like I think I probably like Speaker Box more as like just an album, but the Love Below is so goddamn weird and it's such a departure from everything else they did.
It's really strange because I sort of remember hearing like, okay, yeah, there's Hey Ya and everyone knows that song and
Yeah.
sure, but the experience of listening to the Love Below is this very separate thing that almost has no connection to hearing the song Hey Ya.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily fit in that album in some ways, so I could see that.
So but yeah, that album is definitely an experience to listen to, and I guess that their previous albums are more like Speaker Box,
Much more. Yeah.
okay, because
And they're generally like in a given song, it's like they trade off verses a lot of times, and maybe
Right.
they'll double up in the chorus or
Right.
whatever. But
Just to completely split that shit.
exactly, they literally just took that and split it in half.
Right. So, but what's the name of the Southern play music?
Southern playlistic Cadillac music.
Southern playlistic Cadillac music. Yeah. So I've listened to that album for a while, for like 6 months. That album was just on repeat in my car. And that album is beautiful and cinematic and has its own like sort of like, oh, this is an experience listening to it. But it just isn't as, it just doesn't stretch out as much as Love Below does.
Yeah.
It's still very much it's a fucking ride, you know? But it's not like the fucking psychedelic mind bend, I guess.
It's so weird.
So,
and I like at the time, like I guess I must have bought it because of Hey Ya. Like that's the only explanation.
mm-hmm.
Well, I think Hey Ya and I Like the Way You Move came out at the same time. Because they dropped them from both sides of the album at once.
Right.
And so I probably bought it because of that. And then I dove headfirst into Love Below and just went nuts. I think that's probably how I found that. Yeah. Really,
Okay.
Really weird.
Okay.
But I love it. That's one of my favorite albums.
Nice.
As a piece.
All right.
All right, what do you got?
Okay. This is the exception. This is the exception that proves the rule.
Oh. Yeah, okay. Oh, I didn't even consider this.
Because it's a first album.
Yeah.
How can you subvert expectations if it's your first album? How can you break a trajectory if it's for a first album? I think it's because Mudvayne actually, they went forward in time, wrote all their albums, and then released them in the reverse order. I think this is actually Mudvayne's. It's called LD50 because I think it's actually their 5th album.
Oh, shit. After a while, they stopped calling them LPs. They started calling them LDs.
There it is.
I got you. Laser discs.
So I have to because when you're talking about art albums, I'm like, well, you have to talk about this because this is like such an undeniable sonic experience of a fucking heavy record.
You're not wrong.
And just it is on the top of the heap. But what's strange is that Mudvayne, it's almost like Mudvayne got really, really tired of people not being able to dance to their music at festivals. And then they just let's just write simpler and simpler shit, the
whole thing we've been talking about with the split here, they literally did the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Literally and the point is Hell Yeah, I think, is when they get to.
There's not a band that I've tried harder to like than that band. Because it has Vinnie Paul in it, like the reason that I play drums. And then the singer from one of my favorite bands. And I cannot get past these guys from Peoria cosplaying as Texans. I can't get past it. I just can't. Maybe I should. Vinnie Paul approves. I should approve, right?
Was it just the singer or was it just?
It was actually the guitarist too at first, but then he left.
Okay.
I think on their first 2 Hell Yeah records or whatever. But yeah, no, man, dude, I saw Rammstein a few years ago in Dallas, and Hell Yeah opened up for it. And I didn't know that's who was going to open up for it. And I remember it was a venue very similar to the Cynthia Woods Pavilion, Jexa, I think, Jexa Pavilion, but it's very, very similar venue. And I'm in the seats, and then I remember seeing Vinny off to the side of the stage, and he's however far, he's fuck all far away, and dude, I had a physiological reaction from just knowing that I was at the same address that Vinny was at. I was like, I should, for me to have that kind of reaction, I should like that dude's fucking band. But man, Hell Yeah, I don't know.
All right, well, anyway.
So, but I don't know. I feel like you gotta mention this one, and if you're talking about art albums,
that's a good point. I'm kind of sad I didn't think about that because that is one that I think of as this is one of the albums for me from this era that just really holds up still.
It really, really does.
A lot of albums do not, and a lot of their later albums very much do not for me.
There's always some great songs.
Yeah.
On their later albums, you know what I mean?
I listened to whatever the second
end
one was
of all
called.
Everything Begins Again.
Because they did they did the EP and then they did the album, and they're the same goddamn name scheme, but I can't remember.
Right.
Whatever. Second album I listened to quite a bit, but I've gone back to it, and it's it doesn't hit me quite the same way as it did, but back then.
Yeah.
But
there's some really great songs on there.
Yeah.
But as a whole, it doesn't do. This album is.
it doesn't do what this does.
This album is on a whole. It's in a whole other stratosphere, a whole other galaxy.
Yeah.
You know, to have this many weird songs and to have them all connect and all work and all have their own individual identity, but somehow all create this cohesive whole.
Yeah.
Being all as weird as they are, it's insane. Huge influence on All Severed, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Much like you said earlier, in the way that you would enjoy getting home to listen to Mechanical Animals, I felt that way about this album too.
I remember being just waiting forever for this fucking album to come out.
Because you had seen them, right?
Yeah. We saw them play with Slipknot in like April of 2000 or something. At that same show where Corey was shouting out Fragile.
Okay.
And then like their record didn't come out till like fucking 6 months later. And it was eons when you're like 17.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
All right.
That's a good one.
All right. Toss one out.
Oh man. Okay.
I got more.
I mean, I've got so many. I'm just trying to think what to talk. I mean, I've got some that are like, I don't know if they are. Okay. Tell you what. Here we go. Here's a couple that.
Yeah. We'll go quick.
I know you have a weird history with this album. So what do you think about Stadium Arcadium from the Chili Peppers?
Oh, dude. So I don't have a weird history. I have a stupid history where the first disc is one of my favorite albums of all time, and it's like one of my favorite pieces of music to ever exist ever, and it's so high on like my joy, like music that brings me joy list that I just never got to the second. I never got around to the second disc.
Have you never listened to it still to this day?
I did within the past year.
Okay. I mean, the pandemic, get a lot of time in your hands.
It changes everything. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great.
I feel like that might be one.
I think I would disagree.
Yeah.
I would disagree. I would say that
Californication?
I would.
Okay.
Or maybe even By the Way.
Oh, I forget about By the Way.
That one is that record holds on. That's amazing. And it is weird as shit.
It is weird as shit. I think that's why I had trouble getting into it.
But I think that By the Way sort of firmly puts them out of things derivative of funk rock.
Of like Blood Sugar Sex Magic, which was totally still that.
Right. There is still that on Californication, I feel. But like By the Way, Californication is like the beginning of that experimentation, and By the Way is like the completion of it.
I could see that.
So
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I went with Stadium Arcadium because it was a double album.
Expansive.
And they expanded more. But you're right. You're right. Here's a question. Do you have one for live?
Oh God. That's really funny that you mentioned them. We might have to put a pin in this because I have so much to say.
Okay. I thought you might. So.
About that whole I can talk about that band for that's one of my favorite bands ever of all time.
Okay.
And I have so much to say.
Because for me, it's like I had the first two albums, and I liked I liked a few songs off the first album. Mm-hmm. And then I had to throw in Copper, obviously, because fucking everyone did.
It's one of the best albums ever made.
And it's a fantastic album.
Holds up.
And I kind of... Oh, I'm sorry. I had Secret Samadhi as well.
Hmm.
And I liked some stuff off that album, too. And then I kind of just didn't do much else past that. So I knew... that's why I was asking, because I was like, what...
Well, this is another time. It's another time.
Good stuff. Do you think Linkin Park has one?
I'm not familiar. No, I'm only really familiar with their first two records, so I can't really comment.
Okay.
On Linkin Park.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I kind of lost track after like the third album, I guess. Well, they had the first two, and then they had the remix album, which I can't remember what it was called.
Right.
And then they came back eventually with the third album, and it was very different. And that's kind of where I would probably land there, but I also am not familiar enough with it to say.
Yeah. I guess that might be something that like sort of lands in the like, is this a art album or a crossover album? You know, because I guess you could say that about the Black Album. Like, is the Black Album an art album, or is it a crossover album where like a band becomes, has like this meteoric rise? I didn't mean to do that. Where all of a sudden they bring in all these new people, but it's not necessarily because, or it's not, but that's almost sort of independent of the trajectory that they were on. You know what I mean? Like I feel like Metallica went in to make the album they wanted to make with the Black Album, and it just so happened to like hit a nerve, you know, like be the thing to become meteor, you know, like really popular or whatever. I don't think they set out to do that, you know?
Right.
So,
I mean, I guess tangentially to Linkin Park, you could say that that Fort Minor album is maybe...
I don't even know what that is.
That's Mike Shinoda doing his solo hip-hop thing.
Oh, okay.
It's a really fucking good album, too.
Oh, rad.
Anyway.
All right.
What do you got?
Okay. So which of these two would you consider?
Well, this is on my list.
Okay.
But I also...
Which one came out first? I'm forgetting.
I think Catch 33 came out.
Okay.
The year of or the year prior.
They were really close, right?
Yeah, and I kind of couldn't decide also between those two, honestly.
Okay. So what's interesting about these two, and we're going to start rapid firing this shit.
Yeah.
So the thing about this with these two is I think that this is whenever Meshuggah, because before this, Meshuggah did nothing. Literally, they didn't do a single thing. Nothing
Lazy
matters.
assholes. Yes. Honestly, nothing in contention in a weird way for me too.
I would disagree.
Really?
Well,
okay.
I guess what I mean is that after these, they established that like this doesn't even have real drums on it.
True.
It's one piece of music. This is 20 minutes long. Okay. Who the fuck knows how they put that together? And it was just like, yeah, man, all these rules that y'all apply to metal and how it's supposed to be made and how it's supposed to be played and put out there, we really don't fucking care.
Yeah.
And so like we're gonna like they established themselves as like the art band of metal. And
it's a good point.
And so that's what these albums really did, I feel.
Yeah.
Like because they could have just done Nothing Part 2 and everyone would have loved it. You know, or they could have done Chaos Sphere again. Chaos Sphere is always going to be my favorite Meshuggah record.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They're like, because they had been, you know, grinding, playing music in the room with each other for like 10 years straight at that fucking point. You know what I mean? And so they did this weird shit. And I feel like it kind of did the thing that we were talking about earlier. It like pulverized the palette, the slate for them to where like, yeah, we can do whatever the fuck we want now.
Yeah.
So.
And they kind of did after that.
All right. So there's that one.
Nice.
Here's a fun one. Okay.
I don't know if did we say that's Catch 33 by Meshuggah and then I by Meshuggah.
Yeah, we're such assholes.
Yeah. I think we've pretty much said everything else that's up to this point.
I hope we did. But yeah, we're talking about Meshuggah I and Meshuggah Catch 33. Holy shit, we're dicks. Okay. You familiar with this album?
I don't know what this is.
This is Smashing Pumpkins' Adore, Adore.
Oh, wow. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
I thought it was called Ava Adore. That was a song.
That was a song, yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Do you know anything about this record?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do you have an opinion on this record?
I didn't like it very much.
One of my favorite records of all time.
Damn. Okay, interesting. I had no idea.
Fucking tip top.
Oh, wow.
I'm definitely in my top 10.
Wow. Okay.
Absolutely.
Is this all the same? Is this all one thing?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, Smashing Pumpkins Adore. So yeah, and I feel like this sort of, it's really strange because this is like one of my favorite albums of all time, but I'm not like a huge like connoisseur of Smashing Pumpkins. I can't tell you much about their trajectory. I can just tell you that this album is extremely important to me. And I know that it pissed a lot of their fans off from my understanding.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really fit in the trajectory of like, you know, Siamese Dream or Gish, Siamese Dream, Melancholy, and then this. Because this is very subdued and very mellow. All of the bombast is gone. All the aggression is gone. And that's why I loved it so much, actually. So it's funny because Jimmy Chamberlain is like one of the best modern rock drummers ever, you know, in the past like 30 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. And my favorite Smashing Pumpkins record is the one that he's not on.
It's electronic drums.
No, it's this guy named Matt Walker played a lot of drums on it too.
Oh, I thought it was okay. I guess they just did a lot of synth stuff on it.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, that's what I'm thinking of.
But it's definitely not the like jazz fusion stuff that Jimmy Chamberlin was doing. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say that I liked things off of this album for sure, and then I guess it wasn't until the next album, Machina, that I just like didn't like it at all.
I liked one song.
I was kind of done with it.
So
I mean, we had friends that were like way the fuck into the Smashing Pumpkins,
sure,
and I think that had an effect on me.
Sure.
Detrimentally. So.
All right, I got two more that I definitely want to like talk about.
Okay. All right.
So, Strapping Young Lad, Alien.
All right. Okay.
So, would you consider this an art album?
I haven't listened to this album enough to have an opinion on that, honestly.
Oh, okay. So, it's an art album. Moving on.
What year did this come out? I don't actually know.
I think 2005,
Okay.
2006,
Is this the
there.
next one after?
So this is so it's City,
And then
or
self-titled.
our heavy is a really heavy thing. City, self-titled,
Self-titled.
then this. I'm pretty
Yes.
sure self-titled came out in 2003, I think.
That sounds right.
So
Okay. Yeah, I never got around to that one. I guess too much.
so at the time it came out, let me see if I can find the date. Yeah, 2005.
Okay.
So it was weird as fuck, yo. It's really weird because Devin is singing. He like got off his medication and he's like singing about like, so you want to have a baby? Like he's, and like screaming about Disneyland and love. And it's like, it's what you would be having Strapping Young Lad emotions about if you were in your 30s,
Right.
which he was. I wasn't, so it seemed really foreign and weird.
Sure.
But the music and the drumming is still untouchable.
Still Hoagland?
Yeah.
Okay.
And still like just the music is just wacky and it's anyway, it's worth a listen. It's a fucking experience of a record, but it's not what I had wanted from Strapping Young Lad. So it was a little challenging for me, and it hasn't really grown on me until the past few years, actually.
Okay. Interesting.
So
I'm gonna have to go back and give that another shot then.
it's definitely worth it. It's a motherfucker.
Cool.
So I'm gonna go through a few ones really quick.
Yeah.
And then I have a last one that I want to talk about.
Okay. I've got a couple. Let me throw out a couple real quick.
Yeah, we'll go. Yeah.
What do you think about White Pony?
That's on here.
Deftones.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think it's a great album. It's one of my favorite albums. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just wasn't super into the first two, so I can't comment.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was like marginally into Adrenaline, which was the first album. Bored. Yeah. Just bored. It had some good stuff on it for sure. And then Around the Fur, I was way into
Okay.
when that came out. Like My Own Summer was like one of the first riffs I learned.
So
I
many
think.
people.
So fucking good. And Be Quiet and Drive was like one of the last songs on that album, but it was the precursor to White Pony in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like vibe and like just the textures in that song. Yeah, White Pony, tremendous fucking album.
Okay. So to you, does it feel like an art album?
Yes,
Okay.
positively.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it established the rest of their career,
Oh yeah.
so.
Let's put it this way: every album they've done since that album came out has been weird and divisive in a different way. Like they just kept doing like the shit, kind of like Metallica, I guess, like the shit that they
Sure.
wanted to do, and people liked it or they didn't.
Right.
Because one or two of their albums since then I've loved, and then one or two albums I couldn't care less about.
I see. That's, yeah. So I had White Pony on here.
Nice. I had Risk by Megadeth.
That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, because man, do people hate that record.
they do.
You know what's funny? My buddy Michael Scarlotta, that's like the first Megadeth record he heard, and
Oh,
that's
weird.
he's like, oh, I fucking love Megadeth.
What is that life like?
Yeah, he's like, I love Megadeth. It's like, oh yeah, what are you into? And he's like, oh, that Risk album, and everyone gets quiet around him. Like that. I mean, my favorite Megadeth record is Cryptic Writings, which is like, it's just Risk with like some thrash beats in it.
It's Risk, but they didn't go full Risk yet. Is what happened. And then when they went full Risk, they were like, "You never go full Risk."
Oh, we're hopping the shark. We're not jumping the shark.
Yeah, I think I probably agree that's well.
So like,
I don't agree with that.
Is that an art album, or is that like a failed crossover album? Right.
Right, yeah, right. So now that we're into that maybe that's more what it
It's like,
actually is.
you were just trying to make the Black Album for the aughts, motherfucker.
Because everything after that, they definitely went back to the well.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's true.
I haven't. My favorite Megadeth is like the Megadeth I heard when I was a kid. You know, so like Euthanasia, Cryptic Writings, and that's really all the Megadeth that I need.
I can't. What's the album called? No, I can't even think of the fucking name of it.
Doesn't matter.
The one of theirs that's my favorite.
Countdown to Extinction.
No, the one before that.
Peace Cells.
No. Yes.
I don't know. Dude.
The one the Holy Wars is on.
Rust in Peace.
I don't
Killing
know.
is my business.
I can't actually.
I've just listed all their records.
It must be Rust in Peace.
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I'll throw out Yellow and Green by Baroness.
I'm not.
I know you're not familiar enough.
I love that album. It's your fault.
Yep.
Yeah. But that makes sense to me because I've only have like sort of a cursory knowledge of their first two records.
It's a lot like Mastodon's trajectory, where they had 2 EPs in the very beginning called First and Second, and they were like straight up just hardcore sludge.
Yeah.
Like just deep screams and deep riffs and gross sounding shit. They're really good though. And then they had the Red Album, which is slightly more melodic but still pretty sludgy. And then you had Blue, which was like weirdly heavier but also even more melodic and even more divergent. And then you had Yellow and Green, which was a double album, but not that both parts of it diverged. Just as a whole, it was sort of way more dynamic than what they'd done before.
The songs on on those albums are so good.
That is, I don't know. I don't have a listing of like top albums of all time, but that's in the contention for like top 3.
Yeah, like I don't know what my list is, but I know the ones that are in it. You know?
Yeah. I haven't thought that far ahead, but that's one of my favorite albums of all time, easily. And then one more I'll throw out real quick is, what do you think about Obsolete?
That's on my list, motherfucker.
All right. All right then.
With a question mark. With a question mark.
Okay. I couldn't think of anything better, I guess, and I'm not familiar enough with their later stuff.
I am.
Okay. Well then.
I think Obsolete would qualify.
Fear Factory, Obsolete.
Yes, Fear Factory, Obsolete. We're bad at this, yo.
We'll get better.
So, but yeah, Fear Factory, Obsolete. I think I think the reason that I thought of it was because it was the first concept album that I knew I was listening to. That was really explicit in the liner notes of like, you had the lyrics, but then beside the lyrics, you had the story. And that just seemed like the coolest shit to us, man. And so this idea of like, wait a minute, it doesn't have to just be the lyrics. Like the lyrics can be this piece of a bigger thing, was just, this like mind blowing kind of thing. And so them exposing us to that idea, and I think they've had such a weird career. It's hard to sort of, know, because to me, like, I think Fear Factory has made 3 truly exceptional records. Demanufacture, Mechanize, that's the one they did with Gene Hoglan, and then their most recent one, actually, the one that came out a few months ago.
Yeah.
I think that I've been listening to those almost nonstop. Like Obsolete. So, not all the tracks hold up. Some of them are wonky.
Yeah. The last couple though that sort of really hammer home the sonic art albuminess of it, I think really do hold up pretty well.
I think so too.
Like Timelessness and Resurrection.
Oh, for sure.
Those are fantastic songs.
Absolutely. So yeah.
Okay.
Why not?
Cool. I've got a couple more that I want to run through, but go ahead and do some.
Okay.
Before we end.
So here's a fun one. Undisputed Attitude by Slayer.
Huh. Okay. Okay. I could see that.
It's interesting, right? Because like
Yeah.
for like the metalist metal of the metal bands to do an album of punk rock covers,
yeah.
at the time of our understanding of what punk rock was really crazy.
Yeah.
And really, you know what I mean? So that's sort of why I mentioned that one. If it's like, well, that's not what we were expecting from you guys, and then being like, suck it, you know, it's what you're getting, motherfuckers.
Yeah. True.
It's still a great record. It's still such awesome to listen to. All right, you got another one?
Are you very familiar with Radiohead?
No.
Okay. So I have either OK Computer or Kid A on here. So they did Pablo Honey way back in the day with Creep on it.
Okay.
First album. Then they did The Bins, which was still kind of close to the same thing. And then they put out OK Computer, which is like widely regarded as like this watershed moment in pop music. I don't fucking know exactly.
Right.
But it's an incredible album. It's an absolutely amazing album. And that was already a pretty big departure from what they'd been doing. And it was a concept album, and it was just all over the place. It was really forward-thinking in a lot of ways. And then they did Kid A, which was just this nonsensical, like, audible chaos. And then they, like, what was the next album? Hail to the Thief, I think was the next one. From then on, it was just nonsense.
Yeah.
After that. But I kind of lost track after that. So
nonsense.
It was just nonsense after that. They had albums after that, and it was just nonsense. One of those two I would probably argue for, though. Let's just say that.
Okay. Yeah, because it's a career sort of, it's a pivot. You know, it wasn't what their fan base was expecting.
It wasn't what their fan base was expecting, I don't think, but also it created
right
an even bigger fan base, probably.
Right. Like, I mean, that's kind of what Volume 3 did. You know? In post Volume 3 world, you know, like Slipknot's on Guitar Hero and shit. You know, you're not fucking putting people equal shit on Guitar Hero.
Yeah, but like people who love Radiohead, they don't go back to the Bins. They don't go back to fucking Creep.
I see.
They go back to one of these two albums. Probably,
I see what you're saying. So it's really almost like they had like a proto career that happened to have one of the best single, you know, one of the most played singles ever.
Yeah.
And like their real career started with Kid A almost.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that makes sense. Here's a random one. Burning Red by Machine Head.
Okay. So I have Through the Ashes of Empires on here. Because I really didn't know.
Yeah. So, you know, it feels like there's one in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. Machine Head is like one of our favorite bands, so we could spend a lot of time talking about Machine Head. I picked the Burning Red because if you look at the trajectory, that one's definitely a departure.
Totally.
Like Burn My Eyes, the more things change, and then the Burning Red, you know, like it's very different than what came before it.
Yes, absolutely. Like
Rob
is like rapping all over the place.
Right.
Which you wouldn't have expected. There's a lot.
You should, because if you watch the video for Davidian, he's walking around with cornrows and a pit bull. Like, I don't know why y'all motherfuckers are so surprised, like, to see him in a tracksuit and spitting.
I guess that's fair. But also that album, they had a new guitarist.
Yeah.
So that was a big departure in a lot of ways, just like sonically.
Sure. And it's way more melodic.
Yeah.
Way more melodic.
Yeah.
And I feel like that album introduced a new color into Machine Head's palette that became essential, that never went away, which was that melody. You know what I mean? Because, you know, I mean, Rob was singing before then, but not like he was on that record.
That's true.
And so, and it was when he started to it was a very personal record, you know, and I think that sort of like, it sort of was the piece of Rob sort of putting together of this marriage of like that, like the really personal style that was very common with like nu metal lyrics, but then also like the austerity of traditional metal lyrics and him sort of finding his own way to marry the two of those, which I think you see realized on Through the Ashes of Empires.
That's kind of what it is. Like I feel like probably Burning Red is like the real inflection point there, but Through the Ashes is where they got it right.
I agree.
So
I agree. That's still there's only like Through the Ashes of Empire is still an incredible record.
Yeah.
Start to finish. There's like one or two songs on there that I don't really like, but it's not even really I don't like the songs. I don't like a few of the lyrics. There's just like a few things like take me out of it,
Yeah, sure.
So, okay, rad. Okay, I only have like really one more. Okay, an honorable mention. I had Diabolus in Musica by Slayer again, just because that record pissed so many people off, and I think it's absolutely stupid.
I guess it did, huh?
Fuck all of you who thinks that record's not heavy as shit.
No, it's
like
great.
You need to listen to Bitter Peace. If you don't think that that's one of the heaviest fucking songs that Slayer's ever fucking put out, you can just lick my ass. Like I don't. You're not a Slayer fan. You didn't come. Like you don't listen to Slayer for Slayerness if you don't like the fucking opening track on Diabolus.
That's a good point.
So okay, one more, and then I have the one that I want to finish on. Okay, what about Einema? What do you think about that?
No, I don't think Tool tracks here.
Okay,
is the thing. That's such a like. It's at once an incredibly linear progression, but also like a spiral, man. I don't fucking know. I don't think it works.
Well, because Opiate feels rather straight ahead, and Undertow feels like almost like they just took the ingredients of Opiate and just like, well, let's just stretch them out a little bit, But like Undertow doesn't feel, but Einema feels dense in a way that Undertow doesn't. So, and I feel like Einema was what established what they were doing. But anyway,
I would say
it's a strong maybe for me.
Okay, I won't argue with that. I would say that Lateralis versus Einema kind of probably has the same. There's a equal distance between all of these things.
Those like Lateralis and Einema feel really close to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they just feel like, okay, well, I'm going to look at this thing from here. Oh, well, now I'm going to look at it from here. Like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Whereas, like, Opiate and Undertow feel like over there,
I mean, for me, I guess I see it as a progression, though.
It is a progression.
I guess
it is a progression. That I see what you're saying. So it doesn't really count in the rules that we've established because the progression is clear.
To me, it all makes sense. To me, it was all obvious.
I guess I could see. I feel like there is still a jump between Einema and Undertow because Undertow, I feel like they could have like kind of meandered a little more in the Undertow vibe. I
think there's a jump in like production quality, for sure.
I think in songwriting, but okay.
I like Undertow a lot.
Oh, okay.
Also.
I haven't really listened to it in a long time. I haven't listened to any Tool in a long time, so I should probably shut my fucking mouth.
I still listen to a lot of Tool these days.
Well, I'll defer to you. All right.
So let me do a couple. Let me do a couple rapid fire ones that I don't know if you have any background on at all.
Okay.
What do you think about Paul's Boutique, Beastie Boys?
I love that record.
Yeah, same.
But I don't know any other Beastie Boys. That's the only Beastie Boys record I know. Okay.
Because like coming off of shit like License to Ill, where it's like you gotta fight for your right to party, and then going into this, like, this album's incredible, and it's just totally not that anymore.
Sure.
That was like produced by the Dust Brothers. It was like this really dense, sample-laden like soundscape that their albums were never like.
Right.
But then they went into like went back into Check Your Head, and it's like more rock and stuff. So it was a very weird progression there. I don't know what you thought about that. Anyway, and you're not very familiar with Buckethead, are you?
No.
Okay. He did an album, like his fourth album of his like 75 albums, literally, was called Colma.
It's not okay. You need to edit yourself, dude.
Impossible. And so all Buckethead stuff is just like wild, really like angular sounding music.
Yeah.
And these like just bizarrely technically proficient leads all over the fucking place. And he does Colma, which is an acoustic album.
Oh, okay.
And it's gorgeous. It's a fantastic, beautiful album. Absolutely unlike anything he'd done. But then he repeats this sort of thing over his career. He's done like a number of these albums, and every few so often he does another one.
Oh, okay.
So
like another acoustic album or another like different album?
yes. The answer is yes. So this can't really count because he's got so fucking many albums.
Sure.
It just doesn't matter anymore after a certain point. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that on there because that was like the first point.
I see.
And it's a beautiful album, so I wanted to call
Okay.
it out. The Beatles, do anything? They do anything for you?
I mean, I like the Beatles, so I guess are you gonna talk about Revolver?
I was gonna say like the White Album, maybe,
Okay.
or Sgt. Pepper, maybe in a weird other way.
It's so hard to like judge the Beatles as having a trajectory because their entire career is like in 6 years or whatever stupid thing it is.
Yeah.
You know,
So, I don't have a good one for that, but I put those like as maybes.
Yeah, there's definite like turning points. I feel like the Beatles are like this own island because they didn't really establish a career. They stopped. They're like, all right, well, we're done.
Yeah.
You know, so but there was that turning point, like Revolver or the album after Revolver. Revolver is where it started, where they started to like those things started. No, it wasn't Revolver. The one before that was when things started to get a little psychedelic. And then I think Revolver was the one where it was like, oh, okay.
Rubber Soul maybe was the one.
Yeah,
before?
that's the one. That's where it started. And I guess maybe that's why I would say no, is because when I went back and listened to the Beatles discography start to finish a few years ago, it felt pretty linear.
Okay.
Into the wacky.
I could see that too.
You know?
Yeah, I'm not a huge Beatles aficionado or anything,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't have a huge opinion on that, but I thought maybe. What do you think about Synchronicity by the Police?
I kind of absorbed all of the Police's material at one time.
Okay.
So I don't really know. That's the one with King of Pain on it, though, right?
Oh God, that's a great question. It's their last album. Is the weird part about this?
It's like the red and blue and yellow
Yeah.
on it. Yeah. I actually do have that vinyl inside.
Nice. Have you listened to that album in its entirety though?
I have.
Okay. It's got some really weird shit on it. Like it's got some of their most intricate, just like bizarrely melodic songs, but it also has stuff like the song that Stewart Copeland wrote, which is called, I can't think of the name. But then you got the song that Andy Summer wrote, which is called like Mother, and it's just Sting sort of painfully yelling Mother for like 2 minutes.
Okay.
And it's really terrible. It's not good. But that album to me is just a really bizarre divergence.
Oh, and it has Murder by Numbers,
Numbers.
which is definitely like the like, well, that's going to be Sting's solo career.
Right. But it has Synchronicity 1 and 2, which are like incredible songs.
Right.
And they're so weird.
Right. Yeah. King of Pain is one of my favorite songs of all time.
It's a fantastic song.
I can just listen to that song over and over and
Hell
over
yeah.
and over and over and over. I was actually going to add that to the list of
that
like,
one song.
Of like the Tony Williams, Joey Jordison thing.
Okay.
Of like, here's a good example of how like weird Stewart Copeland is in the context of a pop song.
Right.
You know, because like that first snare hit, like it comes in on like the
Yeah.
you know, and
Yes.
it's like I just every time I hear like Stewart Copeland go, I'm like, I imagine Sting rolling his eyes, and it makes me so happy.
Oh God. Okay. Maybe you have an opinion on this one. I don't so much, but either Achtung Baby or Zeropa.
So,
Oh, okay.
come back to that one. Do you have anything else to add?
I got 3 more. I got Jar of Flies by Alice in Chains.
I don't go fuck Alice in Chains.
Wow. Wow.
I said that just to piss you off.
Wow, it does. Okay. Anyway, Jar of Flies absolutely is an art album. Like,
Okay.
no question about it. I didn't think that you were way into him. So
I have a very sort of surface awareness and enjoyment of Alice in Chains.
gotcha. Okay. Absolutely qualifies though. Stabbing the Drama by Soilwork.
No.
No. Okay.
I'm gonna say a hard no on
Hard
that
no
one.
on that one. Okay.
And that's not an art album. It's not expansive enough or dynamic enough to be an art album.
Yeah, I'm kind of shoehorning it in here because I think it's
It is.
maybe the most dynamic of their albums,
It might be a turning point.
but maybe it doesn't.
But they're you know, it's weird because I forget that there's an album in between Natural Born Chaos and Stabbing the Drama called Figure Number 5.
Oh, that was between. You're right.
And so I forget about Figure Number 5.
I always think it's after, but
because it feels like there is a progression from Natural Born Chaos to Stabbing the Drama. It feels like, oh yeah, that's what would be next. But no, there's this whole other fucking album in between there where they were like kind of like, well, let's just take all the simple parts from Natural Born Chaos and make a whole record out of that. Yeah, no, I feel like Natural Born Chaos is almost more of an art album than Stabbing the Drama.
maybe so. Maybe so. I don't think they have a clear cut one. Is the thing.
Yeah, I think Stabbing the Drama is an incredible album. Don't make no mistake about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got.
That's all you got? Okay.
Yep.
So this is my art album contender.
All right. All right. Oh. I forgot about this album even.
Okay.
So I know, let's preface this by saying I'm not a huge U2 fan. I know that you are a big U2 fan.
I am.
So
I am. And so I'm a little biased for this record because this is my first U2 record. Okay.
Okay.
And so I know that some people would say like, oh, well, because there's like the 80s, sort of arc of U2, which
that's
is
where I'm coming from. Like,
right.
You had Boy and you had War.
Right,
and
Joshua Tree. And they did Rattle and Hum, where they sort of like explore a lot of American roots music.
Yeah.
And then they did Achtung Baby and Zooropa. But what I would say is that Achtung Baby and Zooropa are still very much, they're still writing those U2 style anthems. They're just using a different kind of aesthetic is sort of what I would say.
Okay.
Like if you look up,
Zooropa's really weird though.
it is.
There's a lot of weird shit on that album.
It is. And so, and I'm less familiar with Zooropa. Okay.
Yeah.
But what I know about this record is that this is a beautiful existential crisis of a fucking record.
For you or for Bono?
For Bono.
Okay.
And I love it. I'm here for it. It's what I'm. This is again. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. It's such a special record to me because you have this band who like goes from like singing With or Without You and Streets like this very and then after this they would go back to that in a sense of like Beautiful Day and and all that sort of sense. And then there's fucking songs about like the Playboy Mansion.
I don't remember what was on this album. Oh, Discotheque, of course.
Can I make it? Do I have what it takes to make it through the gates?
Last Night on Earth
of that mansion.
Staring at the Sun.
That was on the radio a lot. You heard that one?
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite songs ever. Do You Feel Loved? So good. All of these songs, I love all of them. And they're all like
interesting.
There's so much doubt. There's so much like existential doubt in this in like even somehow manifested sonically. Like they don't like are we a techno band? Are we
you can see how that would happen though, right?
Is this a very because then you have songs like Please or like Wake Up Dead Man that are very minimal. And you have it's this whole collage of all these types of things. And so this is
okay. Yeah, I buy that.
Totally. And this is the other thing too. Why it sort of feels this way to me. I don't. Lots of people would disagree with me, but this what I do know is that all of the U2 fans that I've met, like people who are like, that would claim, that would name themselves as I am a U2 fan. Yeah. They hate this record.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
And I love it. I love other stuff that they like. I love whatever All That You Can't Leave Behind, How to Dismantle the Atomic Bomb, No Line on the Horizon. I love all of those records. But yeah, this one is really special to me. And I think I was listening to it at a really special, like, formative time. I actually, so this would be a fun spot to end it. I don't know. I think it was after I don't know if it was after 7th grade or after 8th grade. We went to band camp.
Yeah. Yeah, we did.
And we roomed together.
Yes.
And I was listening to this album a lot at the time. And I would also go back to the room. I would skip class to go back to the room to listen to Sober off of Undertow because you had that album and I did not.
Hell yeah.
So
I think you were like, I remember you bringing up Biohazard as well.
Yeah, did you have that record?
I think I had 2 of them. I had Mataleo and I had whatever the other one was before that.
State of the World Address or something. Yeah. Because I remember I would listen to...
Mataleo!
Yeah.
Anyway.
Because there was a song that they had on the Ozfest 96 thing. So I was very, very into that.
Okay.
And so...
anyway.
So many things these eyes have seen. Paper Lip Man, I'll play stuff band.
Weird band. Okay,
you know.
They don't have an art album.
Their art album is the porno that Evan Seinfeld, is that dude's name that he did?
That's a name that sounds like a name that would have been that guy's name.
So, all right. Well, I think that's it. So yeah, episode 2 in the can. So
cool.
Adios, party people.
Peace.
Oh, this last album was U2 Pop.
Oh yeah, I guess
We're talking about U2 Pop. Okay, we're bad at this. We're just getting started.
Well, I thought maybe they could see this one at least.
But what if they're just listening to it?
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I don't know what we'll do.
All right.
All right, adios.